Welcome back to Echo Ridge and another episode here in our Duplicity series. We're currently sitting at 168 duplicants and we have plenty more to print today. The primary project we're looking to complete is setting up a couple of oil wells. First, I wanted to show you a little bit of maintenance I've been doing around the colony, starting with the addition to the timer sensor. In my gunk boiler tutorial, I underscored the fact that a timer sensor helps with these auto sweepers not having to run 100% of the time, picking up tiny little bits of sulfur. So now we have it set to run for 10 seconds every single cycle, which will have the added benefit of saving us a little power, because if they're only running for 10 seconds per cycle, that's 590 seconds worth of 120 watts we're saving. Oh no, Jerry, what did you do? Oh, the crabs are mad again. Somebody save Jerry and don't bury them, please. Okay, Jerry's gonna be just fine. Don't worry about Jerry, and I'll take care of the crabs. Well, that little bit of chaos was sure quick, wasn't it? Oh, look, there's a buried crab. I need to move all of these, so I'm just gonna do a big old wrangle, and I'm gonna relocate this egg up to our crab storage facility. Oh, I guess I don't have a drop-off here, so I'm gonna have to manually relocate each one. That's not too bad. I haven't figured out if I actually want to use the crabs for anything, but at least we know we'll have them if we ever need them. And you might be wondering what I'm doing down here is I'm sealing all of this in. I got tired of waiting for this pond to be siphoned out, so we're doing it the manual way of just building up the floor. And that way these gas pumps don't have to worry about siphoning up all of this, especially considering I made a cute little entrance here. We're going to be cleaning all this up. One of the problems I have with it is, well, none of the ladders match, and I'm not quite sure what to do about that. Either I'm redoing all the ladders over here, or I'm redoing all the ladders over here. So I think common sense says I just need to redo the ladders here. You may have also seen the fact that the suit condition's not doing too much better. So I think it is about time to add a couple more thimble reeds. I'm not entirely convinced that 2 will not work. It's just we're in such a debt right now. With how many Atmo suits need to be repaired, it's not quite happening yet. I'm also going through and trying to pick up and core out the rest of these areas like this. It's going to be a pain in the tuchus at the beginning, but in the end, the base will be cleaner. Not to mention the fact we're going to be able to recover a lot of the ores, for instance, from this radiant gas pipe. There's even some more slime up here. So still lots of little maintenance to do, but after we get the colony all set and everything pretty stable with the crude oil, remember we need the crude oil to be able to lubricate the bionic duplicants, then I think it'll be time to set up a space platform. At least if I can do that before we get to 200 duplicants. But I have to do something between the printing pods. But yes, I am desperately waiting for us to hit 200 duplicants so we can start a new adventure, whatever that may be. Another minor update when it comes to the gunk boiler, and something I have to figure out what we're going to do with, is with all the petroleum coming into these petroleum generators. As you can see, all that polluted water is instantly evaporating, which is good, but it's happening because, if you remember, we lowered when these steam turbines were going to be firing to 50-30. And so since the steam turbines aren't running as much, it's going to get warmer in here, which is a good thing. That way all the polluted water instantly evaporates. We can then recollect that polluted water in the form of the steam when it's condensed, where it will then join our massive water buffer tank. Speaking of which, I have to figure something out with this. Don't worry about it. Just some random crude oil in the middle of our water tank. I did catch most of it, but we're also going to be trying to recapture all the water that we're sending into the oil wells. And remember, the more oil wells that we have, the more water we need to recapture through this steam condensing process. So what I think we're going to do is set up the 2 oil wells and then end up putting them on a timer to where they're not necessarily going to run unless we actually need the oil. And that way we're not fully dependent on all this steam condensing for us to recapture the water that we ended up inputting into the oil wells in the first place. Another issue we're having, please don't mind the errant 1 blobs of natural gas, hydrogen, and polluted oxygen sitting in here, is all this carbon dioxide. Remember, the petroleum generators produce carbon dioxide, and quite a bit of it. And as you can see, each tile here has about 17 kilos worth of it. Unfortunately, it's 120 something degrees, and if we started feeding this carbon dioxide to the slicksters, they would very quickly become molten slicksters. But is that a bad thing? especially considering we're using all the petroleum we're getting instantly. I'm not 100% sure on my decision on that yet because I don't want to run slicksters. Yeah, slicksters would be even a better source of crude oil or petroleum and makes that conversion factor from oil to petroleum to water much more efficient, but it's another critter to ranch, which means more work for the simulation. So I'm not quite sure. Another thing I want to do today is tame this cool steam vent. It is dormant right now, so I do have a little bit of time. Hopefully I can get the whole thing tamed before it comes out of its dormancy. In fact, if the cool steam vent down there is close to what this cool steam vent is, with an average output of 1.3 kilos per second, we could use this water in the oil wells that we're running. And that'll be much cleaner because I won't have to worry about tying the cool steam vent and its water back into our main system here. Sort of a cleaner implementation. So I suppose there's no time better than now to get this whole process started. We will start with our standard box. The next step of this is going to be figuring out where I'm going to get the cooling loop required. It's not going to have to work very hard because I don't care if it's 99-degree water going into these oil wells. The oil well doesn't care how hot the water is. So I don't need a lot of cooling potential. So I have some ideas on that, but first it is time to print yet another dupe. In this case, we're going to be grabbing this chip. They have an extreme digging booster, and they are only error prone with decreased medicine and science. The steel and the Eduardo have decreased strength, so I'd rather not have them because they can't pick as much up. So welcome to the colony, duplicate number 169, Sean Hyatt. Looking at this polluted water vent that for some reason I never analyzed, let's get in there and do that now. If I could control how much and when the water is actually coming out, I could then use that water to tame this cool steam vent. And the reason why I would need to be able to control how much water is coming out is because there are times when this vent is going to go dormant. And during that dormancy period, I still want water to be able to tame this cool steam vent. So what we're going to do is I'm analyzing this polluted water vent, finding out what its average throughput is. In fact, I'm going to make sure this does not output any more water for now so that I can start getting a backstock. Then I need to liquid lock this in, vacuum it out. In the meantime, also waiting for this cool steam vent to get analyzed. It still brings us back to the problem of all the carbon dioxide we're building in here. And since I'm not actually going to be feeding that to slicksters because I don't want to ranch any, the best thing for us might actually be a door crusher. A door crusher is not something I've done very often on the YouTube side of the house, but I've done it fairly regularly on the Twitch side, so this should be an interesting build for quite a few of you. First things first is I need to relocate all these large power transformers. Once all this is switched over, I'll remove all of this and then start to put in the meat and potatoes for the door crushers. Now for the liquid lock, I'm just going to use a little bit of water, hoping that I can catch the dupe, drop it off so we just get one tiny little blob. That way when we seal the whole thing in, it's just adding more water, which is exactly what we want in here anyways. And I know better than to look away from this screen, otherwise I will have water everywhere. So whenever you're ready, dupes. I suppose it would help if I clicked Enable Auto Bottle. Still waiting. Bueller. 169 duplicants on this colony. And we have 97 idlers. You know what that means. Those suits must still be broken. There's our one blob. Did we do it barely enough? We got a little bit of spillage. Not a big deal. I will just mop this portion up, and the rest of this can stay in here. I also need to reroute the incoming water supply with some radiant pipes. Now, I don't have a lot of materials on the refined metal side, but we do have a few tons of gold, so we will just use it. And I think that's going to work out well. Now, eventually this water vent will get analyzed, and then I'll be able to show you the method behind my madness on how we're going to be able to reliably use this polluted water vent, even when it's dormant, to keep this cool steam vent tame. I do need some power for, well, everything. I don't love the potential load on this line, but this one's going to be going away eventually. These two gas pumps are going to be going away eventually, so I don't mind using this line at all. We finally have analyzed this polluted water vent. I still don't remember why I didn't do that in the first place, but now we can see the average output for this vent is 2.495 kilos per second. That's forever. Yes, it erupts at 6.6 kilos per second, but if we're only drawing out 2.5 kilos per second, we know we can draw that amount out and there'll always be 2.5 kilos in the pipe, so long as we have enough buffer tanks to store the excess so this vent doesn't get overpressured. Let's go ahead and seal this one back up. In fact, I'll do it the right way this time. Putting an airflow tile on your polluted water vents allows the water level to rise and push all this gas out. If there's too much gas in the tile, the polluted water vent becomes overpressured. So you leave the airflow tile in there until the water is at least 2 tiles high, which will then push all of this out. In fact, we'll put another airflow tile there, just in case the gas gets trapped there. And then we replace the airflow tiles with insulated tiles. Another thing we need to figure out to make sure that the vent doesn't get overpressured is making sure that we're removing enough water. Because remember, it erupts at 6.6 kilos per second, but we're only going to be withdrawing 2.495 kilos. So for as long as it is active, we need to have enough storage in here for the difference. And I think one way of doing that is to subtract, we'll say 2.5 kilos to err on the positive side, from the 6.6 kilos. When we do that, we're left with 4.1 kilos per second. For how many seconds? Well, our activity period is 88.6 cycles. So we're going to take 88.6 cycles, multiply it times 600 seconds, and then multiply that times the difference of 4.1 kilos per second. And we're given a final number of 217,956 kilos worth of water. Well, our buffer tanks can hold 5 tons or 5,000 kilos worth of polluted water. So we take our 217,956 kilos, divide it by 5,000 kilos, and we're given a total number of 43.5. That is quite a few buffer tanks. Well, I don't want to build that many buffer tanks or use that much material. So instead of using the buffer tank, we'll build our natural buffer tank, which just means we're going to extend this out. Well, we know each tile can hold about a ton of water, so all we have to do is make sure there's enough room for 218 tiles worth of water. In fact, this is 209 to that ladder well, plus we have 12 here, so that will work out just fine. Isn't this much more efficient than building 44 buffer tanks? Our cool steam vent is also finally analyzed, and we can see that we have an average output of 1,045 grams per second. That actually works out perfect. Because remember, each oil well takes 1,000 grams per second, so that'll give us one oil well and just a little bit of a second oil well. And we'll be able to make that happen by the use of bridges. You can see we've also got a perfect vacuum in here, so I can deconstruct this gas pump. And I better hurry, because I just realized we only have 3 cycles until this cool steam vent goes off. What else do I need to build? The water line coming out of here. It's also going to be made out of insulated pipes. And I will just have it come out like that. I'm also going to set the hydro sensor in typical cool steam vent fashion to, we'll say, send a green signal only if it is above 500 kilos. That way there will be enough water in here to hold the temperature. This polluted water is not going to be enough to cool this steam and then water down to a substantial level. It will be enough to condense it into water form. And that's all we need it to do. Now let me go check on the suits. What is going on here? Well, for one, for some reason I had disconnected this line who knows how long ago. It would also help if I would have actually planted the thimble reed when I said I was going to. So let's copy that and get 2 more thimble reeds in. So that's great. So I have all this work needing to be done immediately, and the dupes aren't able to get outside to do it. This is great. Speaking of dupes, it looks like we're ready for another one. This Sonyar has the digging booster, and their only negatives is medicine and science, versus, no, your name's not Sean Hyatt, it is Chip. I'm starting to think this feature is by design. That way if you wanted to permanently rename the dupes, because that bug has been there for quite a long time. For those you don't know what I'm talking about, the last pod we printed out a chip, and we named the chip Sean Hyatt. So for now, for the rest of the episode, it'll keep all the chips to be Sean Hyatt. Or at least until we rename another dupe, I think. I'm not 100% sure how the bug works. So without further ado, welcome to the colony duplicate number 170, L's Dragon. I've also fixed one problem that I should have done a long time ago, and that is putting the exosuit forge on a priority 6. As a matter of fact, this huge Dreco ranch is probably taking up quite a bit of dupe labor, so I am not going to allow anyone else in, only out. I'm sure I won't forget to reset that once we have our problems fixed. In the midst of this, I've also set these pipes to a priority of 9. Hopefully they can get that finished. We have 2.5 cycles remaining. When we're done with all this, I think I'm going to automate the production of the thimble reed. While you can't add automation to the hydroponics tiles, what I could do is put a valve here and have the thimble reeds, say, down here, have a smart storage bin next to them with an auto sweeper that feeds the smart storage bin. And whenever the reed fiber drops below a certain level, we send more polluted water to the thimble reeds. And that way I am not just making an absurd amount of thimble reed, especially considering they take 160 kilos per cycle. So maybe once I get the closest alligator to the boat done, I will add that to the list. So in the midst of all the chaos, this happened. I have no idea what happened, other than there was a possibility that there was enough heat in here that caused some of the gunk to flash in these first few tiles. It's only sulfur gas, so it is condensing, and I'm going to pump the rest of it out, and it will recondense into sulfur anyways. I'm also going to try raising the level of this, and that way there's a 1 tile gap in between where the pipes are and where our petroleum tank is. That way there's a solid separation of temperature from the tank to the first pipe of the counterflow exchanger. In all of my testing with this configuration, I had never seen this, so I'm still not 100% sure what happened. So now what I have to do is wait for the petroleum level to rise to this point right here, and then let it flow down. But I cannot open this tile until there's a lot more petroleum, which means I just have to wait for more bionic dupes to expel their gunk. Next up on the wide world of printing dupes, we have the choice between an ulti and a gizmo. And considering Gizmo's only negatives are husbandry and medicine, and they start with a construction booster, Gizmo wins. Welcome to the colony, duplicant number 171, Timid Flame. Our cool steam vent has started erupting and you can see the rain forming. What happens in here is when the cool steam vent erupts, it erupts with 110 degrees steam. Well, all the temperature shift plates are sitting at 21.8 degrees, and each temperature shift plate is 800 kilos worth of mass. Well, the cool steam vent is only producing about 3.7 kilos worth of mass, so the temperature shift plates are able to easily absorb that amount of thermals coming in from the gas to condense it, and then we get water. You still need some sort of cooling because eventually the temperature shift plates would heat up. And it just so happens that we have that with our giant buffer tank. But remember, we want to be able to provide a continuous source of water, so that means it is time for a wonderful liquid valve. We will throw the liquid valve, say, about here. In fact, it'd look real clean if I put it right there, so let's do that. Make sure we snip those pipes in between. And with it in place, now all we have to do is set the flow control. Remember, we want to make sure we always have water, so I'm just going to set it at 2495. So we go over here, 2495, make sure the pump is connected, and now we have exactly 2.495 kilos coming out of the pipe at a time. So if our math works out right, we will always have water in this tank, which means the cooling loop responsible for keeping the cool steam vent tame will always have water in it. Now granted, the water is going to be coming out hot. It's at 90 degrees. These are very small packets, so it doesn't take it long to heat up. But remember, polluted water can get pretty warm. In fact, it doesn't evaporate to 119.4 degrees, which we know the cool steam vent will never get that high. Now we might eventually have to provide some cooling for this water, only if it gets above 99 degrees, because remember, all that polluted water eventually comes up here to these water sieves, where it converts it over into standard water, which has a lower evaporation point. But because we have so many other sources of cooling around the colony, I don't think that heat is ever going to become a problem, nor do I think that polluted water is ever going to get hot enough for it to evaporate once it hits the water sieves. Next up is going to be the oil wells. Their overheat temperature is 2000 degrees, so it doesn't really matter what you make them out of, so long as you're using a material that doesn't just straight up melt. I don't think I've ever tried lead with these, so I figured why not. And then we're going to take the output for the water. Remember, this water is coming from the cool steam vent, And also we want the priority to be one vent, not the other. So only after this oil well is using its 1 kilo per second, I chose this one because it's closer for the dupes, will then the overflow being about 45 grams per second, will end up going to this oil well. Now we still have a little bit of ways until the hydro sensor detects that there's more than 500 kilos in here, but just in case, I am going to disconnect it from the source here. I have to do that because I need this entire room vacuumed out before I start introducing a bunch of natural gas to it. Then I'm just going to put a gas pump, connect it to some automation, and tie it directly into our natural gas line. We only have a little bit more gases to go. It does take a little while though. In other news around the colony, I have set up our automation here. We have our polluted water flow going through a liquid shutoff and a smart-looking smart storage bin. The smart storage bin is meant to hold 50 kilos worth of reed fiber. Once it does send 50 kilos worth of reed fiber, it will send a green signal. We take that green signal, flip it to a red using a NOT gate, which will then turn the liquid shutoff on, and the thimble reed will stop growing. A minor concern for the future is the thermals in this area. Remember, thimble reeds can only grow into temperatures from 22 to 37, and our polluted water does come in at around 38 degrees, but we do have a cooling loop down here that is keeping this area generally cool. So if I wanted to set it and forget it solution, I could once again add some liquid shutoffs, and when this area got too warm like it is getting now, I can set that cooling loop around, cool this area back down, and once it does, the liquid shutoff would engage again and not allow any more in. So, time to set that up. Before I can show you how that works, it's time to print another dupe. We have a Sonyar and a chip, and even though the chip has decreased excavation and machinery, I like the suit training booster. Reduces that exosuit durability damage, and it gives them a +5 to athletics. So welcome to duplicant number 172, Wi-Fi Ashes, or Wi-Fi Ashes. I'll let you pick which one it is. In another update, our door crusher is working. Now, there are simpler designs for door crushers. I chose an overly complicated one specifically because of what we're trying to do with it. It starts off with a gas element sensor looking for carbon dioxide and an atmos sensor set to above 5 kilos. When both of those signals are true, we combine them with an AND gate. It goes into a filter gate because I want those sensors to make sure those two conditions are true for not just a second if a random gas tile passes between both of them. So it's just sort of a safety precaution to make sure I'm not crushing that valuable steam. It goes into one other side of an AND gate and gets combined with a timer sensor. We use this timer sensor to trigger when the doors open. If the set of conditions with this AND gate are true, the timer sensor is just there to control when these doors open and close. During the green cycle, we have it set on 10 seconds of green and 10 seconds of red. It will send a green signal over to a buffer gate. The buffer gate is only there to say, hey, shut this door immediately, but wait an additional 5 seconds. We wait that time to make sure that we're getting enough gas in here for the doors to crush. As you can see with all the doors open, we have a bunch of carbon dioxide filling in. Before the doors crush, it looks like there's about 4 to 5 kilos in each tile. The front door shuts, and then the remaining doors shut, basically destroying all the carbon dioxide that was in there. And like I said before, the automation on this one is a little bit more complicated, only due to the fact that I don't want to crush any steam. You can run this whole system with just a timer sensor and the buffer gate. But if I did that in this instance, I'd run the chance of destroying valuable steam. Remember, I want all that steam to eventually be condensed into water, which then goes into our primary water tank for the colony. It looks like it's going to take a little bit longer for this room to be vacuumed out. We are down to milligrams, but the system is built and ready to go, which, by the way, the polluted water is now coming out at 70 degrees, and that's even during an activity period of the cool steam vent. So the more this passive cooling loop runs, the cooler this water is going to get, especially when the cool steam vent goes dormant. So I think I'll end up using this system in the future. We're still getting 100% of the water being produced out of the polluted water vent. We're just stretching out the amount of time it takes to get access to it. But once the hydro sensor senses there is over 500 kilos in here, the water is going to be supplied to the oil wells, with this far oil well being prioritized like we said before, which will then give us the needed amount of crude oil to keep all the bionic dupes lubricated. I'm probably going to add some more gas pumps just to quicken the amount of time it takes for this room to be emptied. In other news, our gunk boiler situation was resolved. We now have the liquid lock at the very topsies here, so we shouldn't have to deal with any temperature exchange from this tank to the counterflow heat exchanger. What I think ended up happening is some of these tiny blobs ended up getting too hot and then flashing, because it's easier to flash a tiny blob than it is a 10 kilo blob. But I'm thinking this change here will take that into account. If you're experiencing the same problem, I would recommend putting it up a couple tiles, and you can even insulate these last few tiles if you want to. You'll lose a little bit of efficiency on the counterflow exchanger, but not too bad. Incidentally, during that issue, we did get a little bit of damage on the liquid pump, but that's going to be fixed now that petroleum is being cooled back down. I just had a really big surplus here when I opened this back up, and there was no counterflow to cool all the petroleum. I don't think I ever showed you an update here, but this system is working well. I have a thermo sensor here set at 30 degrees. Whenever this area is above 30 degrees, it sends a green signal to this liquid shutoff, which then sends coolant through this line. I have a bridge here to make sure the direction of flow never gets confused, but now our thimble reeds are growing as happy as a pig in mud. I'm not too worried about these oil wells not running yet, considering we have quite a bit of an oil backstock. And with our gunk boiler and petroleum situation all resolved, our carbon dioxide being destroyed, it looks like we're sort of ready for another major project. And I think that's going to involve completely destroying the entire space biome. I don't know if we'll necessarily get to space in this series, but at the minimum, I would like to collect all this valuable slime, and maybe even all the regolith. As a quick admin note, this will be the only video that you see this week from the channel, because tomorrow I am working on a project that I can't talk about yet. Rest assured you will see that video coming out here in a few weeks. If you want to play a fun game, why don't you try to guess in the comments below what that project might be. Hope you enjoyed this episode and are continuing to enjoy this series. So until next time, much love, happy gaming, and I'll talk to you soon.